We are going to be ranking every game that I played in 2023, both on stream and on YouTube and all that sort of thing. I'm not going to do the Gen 1 to 9 playthrough because that was over the course of like 22 through to the first couple of months of 23, so I'm not going to do those. But I'm going to do every game that I played this year, be they new or old or whatever. Most of the ones on this list I'd only played for the first time this year, because I've been trying to play games that are new to me. There's a few that I've played before, but most of these were new to me. We've got our lovely ranks from pure trash to I don't recommend it to meh to I would recommend it to I would highly recommend it to this game is goated. This game is insanely good. And then the one game that will be my game of the year. My game of the year from the games that I've played. There's 40 this year for us to go through. 2024 is going to be much bigger because, like I said, we've got earlier on, not on the video, hi YouTube, we have got themed months every month this for 2024, so it's going to be like 4 or 5 times bigger. But we'll get onto that in a little bit. Let's get started. So the first thing I did this year was Disney Dreamlight Valley. All right, so I played Dreamlight Valley all the way through until the end of like the Forgotten quest. So like the first major storyline of Dreamlight Valley. I know that they're doing more storylines and everything, but I stopped when I finished what is essentially the opening story. Right, it's a cozy game for those who don't know. You build your own town basically using Disney Pixar characters. They had a fair few available by the time I'd finished that first storyline, but where am I going to put it? I'd recommend it. If you like cozy games, I'd recommend it. There are some things I wouldn't put it highly recommended because it is gradually becoming a bit more about paying for content. It's a bit too grindy for my liking. It's a bit too grindy for my liking. I know cozy games are meant to be about that grind and everything, but it's still not that great. Still not that great. It's pay to play, kinda. So it is free, but at the same time, with their season pass or whatever you want to call it, sort of thing where they have like obviously they have like getting to level 100 or whatever it is. You know the thing. It kind of takes it away from me a little bit. Tried Dreamlight when my wife got it when it was new. It's just not my thing. I'm not into games that have build and design areas that much. See, I love building games, but for me, Dreamlight Valley was a little bit too much about paying, and it got worse as time went on. But if you like cozy games and you love Disney Pixar, I recommend it. Crash 4. So we did play the Crash trilogy, but that was in 2022. Crash 4 was this year, though. Again, I'd recommend it. If you like Crash, I'd recommend playing it. It's nothing to write home about. It's not the most incredibly, amazingly spectacular game I've ever played. It's definitely not better than the original trilogy. It's good. I wouldn't complain about it. I wouldn't say it's a bad game. I think it's a good game. But it's just not as good as I was hoping it would be. They did a really good job at making a new Crash feel like the old Crashes, but it didn't have the same charm to it that I think the original trilogy had. I'd recommend Crash 4. If you like the Crash games, give it a play. I wouldn't say it's like the best, but it's good. So we have quite a few retro games on here because of Retro Month. The first one that we have is Simpsons Hit and Run. I highly recommend the Simpsons Hit and Run. The thing I've noticed as I've gone back and played older games is some of them are nowhere near as good as I remember them being. Some of them are way better than I remember them being. And some of them are a lot harder than I remember them being. The Simpsons Hit and Run is it's better than I remember it being, and it's also harder than I remember it being. I highly recommend it. I really want them to make an anniversary version or a remaster version or just an updated graphics version of it, or just re-release it on like modern consoles. Because you can't get it on PC. The only way to really play this is to get the original game on PS2. I highly, highly recommend it, though. If you can get your hands on it and you can play it, play it. It's so good. It's Grand Theft Auto, but The Simpsons. Surgeon Simulator 2. I don't recommend it. I do not recommend it. I was tempted, and I still might put it in pure trash, but I think I'm just going to not recommend it because it's not for me. It's not my kind of game. I personally didn't like it at all. I didn't like it at all. The biggest problem I had with Surgeon Simulator 2 was I think it's meant to be played with people. I think you're meant to play it with people. I think if you play it with friends, I think the enjoyment of it flies up. I feel like it needs to be played with people. Personally, I didn't like it. I thought the controls were terrible. But the annoying thing is that I can't say that the controls are terrible because they're deliberately terrible. Like, they've deliberately made it like kind of like Octodad, where like everything doesn't really work quite right, and that's part of the thing. It's the frustration. So I mean, they've done it on purpose, but I don't recommend it. Sorry in advance for any coughing or anything. I'm still sick. Zelda Link's Awakening. My first ever Zelda game that I played it this year. It's the Switch remaster version. Do I want to recommend or highly recommend? I would recommend it. If you've not played a Zelda game before, it's a nice way into the franchise because it's just a modernized version of like one of the originals. I liked it. I liked it a lot. The only problem I have is the problem that a lot of older games have, even though this is a remaster, a lot of older games have, where the hand-holding is non-existent. I don't like hand-holding, but you need a little bit. You need a little bit. It was one of those games where unless you have a walkthrough, you're gonna be going all over the place, like trying to figure out what to do. So yeah, I'd recommend Zelda Link's Awakening, like the Switch version. I thought it was cute. I thought it was nice. I don't know if it's better than the original. I've heard people prefer the original to this one, but it's my only Zelda game I've ever played, and I liked it as an entry point to the franchise. So yeah. Portal. My first time completing Portal. I played Portal before, but I'd never completed it. I'd recommend it. It's a good game. I'm going to put it above these. I'm going to do a little bit of rearranging here. I'm going to put Dreamlight Valley at the bottom here. Link's Awakening above Crash 4. I think Portal is one that I would recommend. I think it's a really good game. It's aged perfectly fine. Bear in mind that Portal technically counted as a Retro Month game, even though I played it earlier on in the year. Retro being 15 years or older. I thought it was really good. That has genuinely stunned me that you've never played Zelda. No, I've never played Zelda. You're going to be more stunned as well as we go along. I liked Portal. I thought it was a really good game. It's very short. I don't know how much replayability it has, but it's a good game. It's a good game. I'm going to hold off on Portal 2. I'm going to do the games that I co-opt together. We're going to skip Final Fantasy for now as well. Let's do Retro Month. So we went Retro Month, Spooky Month, November, Final Fantasy Month. So we had retro games, then we had spooky games, then we had games that came out this year, and then we had Final Fantasy Month. And we've got a few others scattered around. So let me find the games that we played that weren't part of those months. Okay, Gas Station Simulator. Gas Station Simulator. It's literally what it says on tin. You simulate running a gas station on Route 66. I would recommend it. I wouldn't highly recommend it. They're still working on it. I'd recommend Gas Station Sim. It's a fun indie game. There's DLC for it. It's a fun game. There are quite a lot of bugs and everything with it still because they are working on it. But I'd recommend it. If you like simulator games, play Gas Station Sim. It's fun. It's good management game. Yeah, I like it. I'd recommend it. Speaking of Sims, Arcade Paradise. Goated. Arcade Paradise is the best simulator game I've played so far. My Chad outfit was amazing for Gas Station Sim. I know, right? I preferred my 90s outfit for Arcade Paradise, though. Arcade Paradise is so good. It's so good. For an indie game as well, it's incredibly good. The amount of work that they've put into that game is staggering. You don't just run an arcade set in like the early 90s, but and it has a storyline which a lot of simulator games don't have. The fact that they took the time to make every single arcade machine playable with their own rewards, their own point, and like playing the game, the arcade games, had a purpose because it makes them more popular, makes you earn more money from them. It was genius. It's such a good game. I highly, highly recommend it. And because it's an indie game, it tends to be quite cheap. So if you want a really fun experience, play Arcade Sim. Absolutely loved it. Arcade Paradise, amazing arcade sim. Right, are there any other games that weren't part of a themed month? There are. Yeah, Raft, but that's a co-op game, so we'll do that in a minute. Any others? No, cool. Right, Retro Month. So for Retro Month this year, we played Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase. It's pure trash. It is pure trash. like Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase is just absolute trash. Like, it is such a bad game. Like, the lip syncing, if you can call it, is non-existent. The level design is terrible. The controls are terrible. The hitboxes are non-existent. It's almost kind of done the impossible, though. It's so bad that it's fun. If you know what I mean, it's so bad that it's fun. Just because it's fun to make fun of how bad it is. But it's an awful game. It's originally, I think it's just PS1. Awful game. Awful game. Don't play it unless you have fond memories of it. Doom, 1993, the original Doom. I'd recommend it. I'd put it above Crash 4. I think, considering it's like one of the original first-person shooters, it's not the original first-person shooter, but it's like one of the first 3 or 4. It's insanely good. It's a great game, considering how old it is. I had a lot of fun playing it. I found it challenging. But if you don't like older games, you won't like it. Play the newer Doom, the 2014, 15, whichever one that was. Play that one instead, which I plan to do in 2024. So yeah. But I'd recommend it if you like it. Doom above Crash is blasphemy. No, it's not. Doom's outstanding. Parappa the Rapper. I don't recommend it. I don't recommend Parappa the Rapper, but I would put it above Surgeon Simulator 2. I don't recommend Parappa the Rapper. Parappa the Rapper is a good game. It's a fun game, but it's broken. Like, the inputs don't really work. While we were playing it, there's especially the chicken level. If you see my playthrough of it, the chicken level is just broken. Like, the inputs are completely wrong and stuff. It's a fun game until it stops being fun, if you know what I mean. Like, there's a very definite moment where it just stops being fun. So I wouldn't recommend Parappa the Rapper. Maybe play the remaster. They did do a remaster of it. So maybe do the remaster. That's the original PS1 version that I played. Maybe do the remaster. Crash Bash. Crash Bash. Oh, the Crash Bandicoot party game. Meh. It wasn't as good as I remember it. It was a lot more frustrating than I remember it being. I'd imagine it's more fun to play in co-op than it is to play single player, especially because there'll be 2 of you against 2 AI. Whereas when it was me against 3 AI, it became insanely hard towards the end. The amount of time that was spent in that last warp room is insane because the game was just so unforgiving. Because it was 3 against 1, and the AI were broken. In single player, didn't the AI just target the heck out of you? Yeah, basically, yeah, basically. If they remake it like they've remade Crash Team Racing, that could be cool. But Crash Bash, the original? Right. Red Alert 3. Red Alert 3. Highly recommend. I highly recommend Red Alert 3. We did one of the 3 campaigns. We didn't touch the DLC, or expansion as it was back then, and it was insanely good. We had Tim Curry smashing all the way through. I loved it. Red Alert 3 is an outstanding RTS game. It's so good. If you like any Command & Conquer or any RTS real-time strategy games, play Red Alert 3. Oh, the only Pokemon that's actually on this list, because I'm going to do my own separate thing for Gen 1 to 9. Pokemon Snap, the original on the N64. Meh. It was fun to play, but meh. It's nothing to write home about. It's very short. It's only like, I think I beat it in like 2.5 hours. It was alright. I insert it's alright. Insert that meme, you know, like, it's okay. It's just an okay game. It's one of those where, like, maybe in the past it was outstanding, but nowadays it's just nothing wrong with it, nothing right with it, kind of thing, you know. I would recommend playing the new Pokemon Snap, the sequel that they've made that's out on the Switch. Play that, because that's, for me, that's a much better modern version of it, as it were. Definitely worth playing. You can play this one as well. It's just, I personally recommend playing, if you're going to play one of them, play the newer one. Toy Story 2. I'd recommend it. I'll put it above Dreamlight. I'd recommend Toy Story 2, Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue. It was a fun game. It was a very fun game. It's also our first retro game to hit recommended. We got 2 in highly recommend, but yeah. Also, I've just noticed that the only non-retro game above recommended is Arcade Paradise so far. But yeah, Toy Story 2, amazing game, great game. The nostalgia wasn't there for no reason. Like, the nostalgia was valid. It is a good game. It is a really good game. If you like old school platformers, play it. It's just challenging enough to keep you going. It's one of the longer playthroughs I had as well for like retro games. Considering it's a platformer, that's pretty impressive. But yeah, I'd recommend it. I think it's fun. If you want a little bit of nostalgia and you can find a way to play it, play it. It's fun. Right. Spore. Pure trash. Pure trash. Spore was such a disappointment. I remember having so much fun with Spore, and then I remembered why I had fun with Spore as a kid. The reason I had fun with Spore as a kid is because I only played it up until the Civilization time period. As soon as you enter the Space Age, it goes from being a recommended all the way down to a pure trash. Like, the Space Age is too long, it's boring, and I had to cheat in... Did I cheat? Yeah, I think I cheated, didn't I? I had to cheat in order to speed myself through to get to the end. Because I think if I did like 4 or 5 streams of it, the last like 3 were the Space Age. The Space Age was way too long in comparison to everything else, and it was boring. Space Age seemed like it was supposed to be its own game. It really did. Yeah, you found the cheats for me, Dan? Yeah, the Space Age definitely feels like it was meant to be its own game. It ruined it for me. Personally, I think if I'd done it legitimately, I would have been playing that game for another 20, 30 hours just to get to the end of the final age. It was sort of like they had, what was it, 4 or 5 ages. They had like the original like bacteria sort of stage. They had you on land being a creature. They had you being a tribe. They had the civilization, and then they had the Space Age. So it's 5. The first one was done like that. The second one was relatively short. The third one was also really short. The fourth one, once you knew what you were doing, was over like that. And then the Space Age lasted a decade. I don't recommend it at all. Do the beginning bit. That's the only bit I would recommend, the beginning bit where you're doing the silly little designs of the creatures and stuff. Do that. But as soon as you get Space Age, just quit. Okay, before we move on to Spooky Month, I'm going to do the co-op games that I did this year. So I did quite a few co-op games with Best Buddy Random, some of which may be on YouTube now, some of which probably aren't on YouTube now. We started with Raft. I highly recommend Raft. If you like, in fact, I'm going to put it above Red Alert. I highly recommend Raft. If you like survival games, if you like multiplayer games, play Raft. Raft is so good. It's so good. The amount of fun that you can have in single player or in multiplayer with Raft is insane. It's a great game. Fantastic survival game. Highly recommend it. It's not difficult per se. Like, the only real like risk you've got is the shark, and the shark quickly becomes not a risk. But it's still a really fun game to play with friends. Really fun game. And unlike a lot of survival games, it has a story that, you know, you work your way through. It's a long story as well, and when you reach the end of the story, you can just build the raft, do the raft as much as you want. You can keep playing. It's a great game. I highly recommend it. The next co-op game I played with Random was Borderlands. It's a meh game. It's meh. For me, it was meh. It's not that it's a bad game, it's just it's aged horribly. It's aged horribly for me. It was my first time playing Borderlands. That might be the problem. I don't have any nostalgia to lean on. It was my first time playing Borderlands. I've heard Borderlands 2 is infinitely better, and I'm very much looking forward to playing it. But Borderlands 1 is meh. It's meh. Play it co-op. Don't play it single player. Play it co-op like I did. I think that'll help get you through it. I think Borderlands 2, from what I've heard from all of you, is going to be a recommend or a highly recommend, and Borderlands 3 will be a meh or a recommend. But 1 is okay. It's okay. It's meh. Portal 2 was the next thing I played with him. Portal 2, I'd recommend it. I'd recommend it above Portal. I think Portal 2 was a really good game to play co-op. I know one thing that I like about Portal 2 is that I could go back and play it again, because I know Portal 2 has a separate storyline for single player, which is very cool. The idea that they took the time to make 2 separate stories for single player and multiplayer is fantastic for me, because I really want to go back to Portal 2 and play it single player. And if you've played Portal 2 before in single player, you can play it co-op and it's a different storyline. So go play it. Right, then the last thing that I co-opted with Random this year, actually I co-opted with a few of you as well, was Payday 3. It was one of our games for November because it came out this year. It's meh. It's meh. I'd say it's above Snap, but it's not above Crash Bash. It's meh. Payday 3 was just okay. It was just okay. Payday 3 is one of those games you have to play it with people because the AI are so thick. They're so stupid. When it was Random and myself, we were doing okay, but not great. We were both new to the game, and the AI was being silly, and so it was only okay. But then as soon as 2 of you guys came in and joined us, and we had a full party of people, actual people playing it, it then became a lot better, but also a lot easier. So I'd say it's not a very difficult game. It's only okay in terms of enjoyment. That is all the co-op games I did, I believe. I'm just looking. Are there any more co-op games? No, that's it. Okay, cool. Spooky month. We started Spooky month with Limbo. I would highly recommend Limbo. I would highly recommend Limbo. If you like environmental, immersive, like survival, sort of like horror-ish games, play Limbo. Playdead, I think they're called, who make Limbo and Inside. They've done a fantastic job of telling a story with no talking. There's no speech. There's no dialogue at all in Limbo or Inside. And yet they tell the story so beautifully. It's absolutely fantastic. They're showing instead of telling, and it's fantastic. I'd put it above Red Alert 3, I think. Inside was the next one I played, which was also Playdead Studios. I'd recommend it. I wouldn't say it's as good as Limbo, but I'd recommend it. Where would I put it? I'd put it above Gas Station Sim and above Dreamlight, but I wouldn't put it above Toy Story 2 or Crash 4. It's only okay. I'd recommend it because I don't think it's a meh game. But if you liked Limbo, you'll like Inside. If you didn't like Limbo, you'll hate Inside. Inside, you can see that they've improved their mechanics and all that kind of thing from Limbo, but I don't think it's as good at telling a story as Limbo. I don't think it's as good. The ending confused me so much. Inside got very weird. Yeah, it got very weird towards the end. It took turns that I was not expecting it to take, which isn't always a bad thing, but I was still like, about it. We then played Cellar. Cellar was one that none of you had heard of, and I'm not surprised because it's an indie game, and when I say indie game, I could mean a lot of things when I say indie game, but when I say indie game for Cellar, I mean indie. It is such a small game, but I'd recommend it. I'd recommend Cellar. Cellar is one that I think not many people have played. It's only about 30 minutes long unless you're going for completionism. If you're going for completionism, you can play it for a lot longer. The general story, campaign, whatever, it's about 30 minutes to an hour. 30 minutes to an hour. But it's still a really, really good indie game. It's in your library, you never play it though. It's fun. It's fun. Not hard at all, but it's fun. I'd recommend it, but it's definitely at the bottom of my list for recommended. But now we move on to the absolute beautiful series, the amazing series. I almost said GOAT, but then it means that I've got to put them all in GOAT. The insanely good series of The Walking Dead. We did all of the 4 main series of The Walking Dead Telltale games for Spooky Month. We did Walking Dead Season 1, Season 2, New Frontier, and Final Season. I had never played any of them. Walking Dead Season 1 is GOATed, and it's above Arcade Paradise. It is GOATed. In fact, I'm gonna put it. I can't put it game. We're putting it GOATed, then we're voting on one for Game of the Year. I put it GOATed. It's so good. It's so insanely good. The Walking Dead Season 1 is GOATed. 100% GOATed. It's so incredibly... It's It's just amazing storytelling. It's amazing storytelling. The beginning of the love for Clem. Clem is best girl. I'm sorry, Clem is best girl of the year. Like, Clem is Clem is insanely good. We all love Clem here. Like, The Walking Dead Season 1, phenomenal game. Phenomenal game. Never played a Telltale game. If you're going to play any Telltale game, play the first season of Walking Dead. It is so good. The series as a whole had me emotional throughout. It's so good. Yeah, the game where everything is Clem's fault despite the fact she's a child and has done nothing wrong. Yeah. But it's such a good game. It's goated. Season 1 is goated. Season 2, I'd highly recommend. And it's going straight to the top of that. It's not as good as Season 1, but I'd still highly recommend it. Next in the order is A New Frontier, technically the third game. I'd recommend it. I'd put it at the top of recommended. I think it's a really good game, but I wouldn't highly recommend it, and you technically don't need to play it in order to follow the full story of Clem. Clem is in it, but you don't play as Clem. You play as someone else. I won't spoil anything, but you play as someone else for the third game, but Clem is in it. And then the final season is goated. The final season is goated. What a way to end a series. Yes! What a way to end a series. Like, to have your first and your last game both outstanding is one heck of an achievement. It's one heck of an achievement. To get it up, to get your last game, your fourth game, to be as good, if not better than the first game is an insane accomplishment, but they did it. It is so good. Amazing start, amazing end, and a good middle. It's just so good. I was crying so hard at the final bit for that. Like, the fact that they've managed to get it so that I am crying at the end of your game is incredible. I think most of chat cried at one point during that series, for sure. They proper got you with a twist. They really did. I don't know, the desperate tears nearly happened a few times. Then we did Toilet Chronicles, which is kind of like an indie game, lots of different endings, all that kind of thing. I'd recommend it. It's a fun game. I'd put it below Gas Station Sim. It's a fun indie game. Kind of like a choose your own adventure kind of thing. It's fun. I wouldn't say it's anything to necessarily write home about, but it's definitely not meh. I think it's a decent game. I'd recommend playing it if you like that kind of game. But yeah, I don't really have much to say about it. It's one of those games that you kind of have to play it yourself to like understand it. You have to play it yourself to understand it. If you like kind of like weird, trippy sort of like games, maybe try Toilet Chronicles. Yes, Haunted House. So Haunted House is the only game this year that I was given. I was given the game by the devs. I wasn't paid for it. They didn't pay me for it. They said, "Hey, we love what you do. Can you play our game?" And I'm glad I did. I'd recommend it. I genuinely would recommend it. I'd put it above Gas Station Sim, but below Dreamlight. I think it's a good game. It's a remake of a classic arcade game called Haunted House. It's really good. If you like roguelike games, it's really good. If you don't like roguelike games, then it's probably not for you. But I think it's a really good remake. I think it's a really good remake. Right, The Wolf Among Us, another Telltale game. We played a lot of Telltale games this year. I'd recommend it. I can't put it above The Walking Dead. I'd recommend The Wolf Among Us, but I wouldn't say it's better than The Walking Dead. I think it's a really good one. If you like sort of detective games where you sort of choose your own adventure kind of stuff like Telltale did with The Walking Dead, then go for it. I thought it was really good. I thought it was really good. Not as good as The Walking Dead, but, you know, still really good. That's true. Telltale also came to hang out for The Walking Dead, and I think they hung out for a little bit of The Wolf Among Us, but I don't remember. It was very cool to see them in chat. That was a lot of fun. We had a few devs pop into chat. The Gas Station Sim devs popped into chat as well. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to see devs in chat. Last spooky month game, Luigi's Mansion 3. Luigi's Mansion 3. I highly recommend Luigi's Mansion 3. And I would put it above Hit and Run. Luigi's Mansion 3 was my first Luigi's Mansion game. I've not played 1 or 2, or any others that there may be. I loved it. I loved Luigi's Mansion. I thought it was fantastic. Obviously, there was that one bit that we won't talk about that I absolutely hated, but that was just because I didn't get good. But it's so good. I'd highly recommend it. I don't think it's goated, Aaron, and although I can absolutely see why you'd think it's goated. But I'd highly recommend Luigi's Mansion 3. Very fun game, very challenging at times, but very good. The controls were frustrating at times, but apart from the control issue that I had from time to time, very fun game. Very fun game. But that's the end of Spooky Month. So we only have November and Final Fantasy Month left. So let's go for November. So the first thing I played for November was Payday 3, but we've already done that one. Next thing we're going to have is Baldur's Gate 3, and it is goated. It is absolutely goated. It's absolutely goated. It's an insanely good game. So the playthrough, which is still currently processing on YouTube, it's such a massive playthrough, it's taking forever to process. It's HD for me as of filming this. Is such an insanely good game. The fact that I managed to beat that game in about 66-ish hours is insane, because I have managed to get to the end of Act 1 in my own personal playthrough, where I'm doing everything. I've done the Underdark, I've done everything that I can possibly do that I can find, and I'm at about 30 hours already. The fact that I managed to beat this in about 66 hours is insane. It has so much replayability. It is so detailed. For me, not only is it a goated game, but like The Walking Dead, I'd say it's a game that will go down as being one of the best games ever. Not just this year, but ever. Baldur's Gate 3, The Walking Dead, both of them greatest games ever. Arcade Paradise, I could argue it, but I get why people wouldn't choose it, but still, goated games. All goated. Who would have thought the game of the year is goated? Right. Suika Game, or however you say it. I would highly recommend Suika Game. Suika Game is, for those who don't know, it's like a fruit merging game that became really popular among content creators. Originally, it was just in the Japanese store, but they released it worldwide this year because of how popular it suddenly became in the West. Like, people were making Japanese Nintendo accounts so that they could get it. It's only on the Switch, but it's dirt cheap. And it's so fun. It's so relaxing. It's a great game to just switch off to. I can't put it above any of these because it has no story. It's just a nice little merging game. Like, you could have it on your phone easily. It could just exist on your phone. But still a very fun game. Very fun game. Mario Wonder. Mario Wonder. I would highly recommend Mario Wonder. I don't think it's goated. I don't think Mario Wonder is goated. I don't think it's better than... Actually, no, I do think it's better than Season 2 of The Walking Dead. I would highly recommend Mario Wonder. I wouldn't put it in goated because I don't think it stands on the same pedestal as Baldur's Gate 3, Walking Dead, and Arcade Paradise. But it's a very good game. And there's better Mario games, but Wonder was solid. So, Wonder was my first Mario game. So you were saying earlier about I can't believe that was your first Zelda game. This was my first Mario game. If you take away Mario Party and Mario Kart, take those away and just talk like mainline Mario games, Mario Wonder was my first Mario game because I just didn't grow up with Nintendo consoles. So I never played Zelda, I never played Wonder, I never played Mario, sorry. So Wonder was my first Mario game. If you're new to Mario, like me, play it. Absolutely play it. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it was my first Mario platformer. So yeah, it's my first Mario platformer. I'd highly recommend it. It's a fantastic game. The fact that they have made a game that is so solid all the way through, that the catchiest, like the thing that went viral online, on TikTok and all that sort of places, the Piranha March thing, the that one, the fact that that's level 2 or 3 should tell you everything. Surprise game of the year for me. We needed a bit of time to kill for the end of November. You recommended Hi-Fi Rush to me. It is goated. It is goated. Hi-Fi Rush was the surprise GOAT game of the year. It was so good. It was so insanely good. I absolutely loved Hi-Fi Rush. I never thought that I'd enjoy a an action rhythm game. It had me laughing constantly. It had me struggling at times. It was just so good. It's so unbelievably good. I've just seen that it's on Steam as well. I thought it was just on Xbox and Xbox Game Pass, but good news, it's on Steam as well. I'd highly recommend playing it. It is goated for me. It is goated. I've started a second playthrough in my own time with Em watching. Em's loving it. She thinks it's great. It's definitely one of the goated games of the year for me. Ooh, now we move on to the last 5. Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. For context, if you've not seen any of my Final Fantasy playthroughs, I am new to Final Fantasy. I've only played Final Fantasy X in the past, and it was years ago, so I'm playing through the entire series, and we made it through the first 5 this year. We were hoping to make it through 6, but I had some issues with my internet and everything, so we couldn't play 6 before the end of the year. But Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 have been played. I've specifically played the Pixel remasters, so I've gotten the images for the Pixel remasters. We're playing through the rest of the series throughout the year. Every Friday on Twitch is Final Fantasy Friday, so we're playing through Final Fantasy on Friday, so we'll play through 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 16, 15, and 16 throughout the year. But we played 1 to 5 at the moment. Unfortunately, they're not in order. They've rearranged themselves, but Final Fantasy 1, I'd recommend it. I'd recommend Final Fantasy 1. Final Fantasy 1 was a really nice introduction to the series. It was a really, really nice introduction to the series. I think for a first attempt at an RPG, well, it's not their first attempt, but first attempt at the Final Fantasy franchise, it's a great game. Great game. I'd recommend it. It's at the top of my recommended list. It's not highly recommended, but it's at the top of my recommended list. I think it's a great game. I think it's a great, great game. Final Fantasy 2, however... Final Fantasy 2, I don't recommend. I don't recommend Final Fantasy 2 at all. The job system that they introduced was a mistake. I don't think they should have introduced that. It made the game feel a lot slower and a lot more dragged out than it needed to be. Although that's apparently a common theme in Final Fantasy, as we'll get onto with the others. But Final Fantasy 2, I don't recommend it. Out of all the ones we've played, it's okay, but if we're talking about Final Fantasies, I don't recommend it. I just don't think it's anywhere near as good as some of the others. Final Fantasy 3, I'd recommend it, but I'm going to put it at the bottom of recommended. Because the game was doing really, really well at being better than the others. And then the end of the game just went downhill rapidly. Like, it was such a fall from grace. Like, it was doing so well, but then I guess the higher you fly, the further you fall, you know? The end was unnecessarily... hard. It was a massive spike in difficulty. Throwing in those 4 mini bosses before you could take on the final boss was stupid. Deliberately dragged it out and put a sour taste in my mouth. It put a sour taste in my mouth. I didn't like it. But Final Fantasy IV, goated. Goated. Absolutely goated. Final Fantasy IV is the bottom of my goated list, but by far and away, Final Fantasy IV is the best one we've played so far. By far and away, it's the best one we've played so far. The fact that Final Fantasy IV... Here, you put Pitchfork away. Final Fantasy IV took... it took everything that was good about Final Fantasy and added a nice, silly twist to it. It was like watching a soap opera. It was hilarious. The amount of twists and turns, absolutely hilarious. I loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I was never bored playing Final Fantasy IV. Which is a hard thing to do with an RPG, especially a JRPG, a Japanese RPG. So I put that at the bottom of my goated. It's not goated like these, but it's definitely a goated game. And then we've got you. Final Fantasy V. The last game we played for the year. And what a way to end the year with pure trash. Oh my god. Not the worst game I've played all year, but still trash. Still trashed. Final Fantasy V. Oh my god. Oh, everything about it made me hurt. It was one of those. Final Fantasy V... It was such a disappointment because it had everything going for it at the beginning. All the mechanics... Come on, thank you for the resub. All the mechanics had sort of been tweaked and figured out. They've taken the job system and kind of made it playable, like from 2. But it just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse as we played through it. It dragged. It took us, what was it, 30 minutes? It took us like 29 minutes and 30 seconds to get from the moment we beat the final boss to the end screen. Because it had that many endings. It had that many endings. It had an ending, then another ending, then another ending, then another ending. It had so many problems. Terrible, terrible villain. You're going to call him X-Death. You're going to call him X-Death. The fact that we changed his name to Barry and then Bowie because he was just so ridiculous should tell you everything. But the game is just, I didn't enjoy it at all. It's awful. Don't play Final Fantasy V. If you're trying to get into Final Fantasy, play 1, sure. Play 4, sure. Maybe even play 3. Don't play 2. Absolutely don't play 5. Absolutely don't play 5. 5 is the worst one by far so far. I'm maybe going to move, I'll move Payday above Crash Bash. Okay, recommended. Most of the games I've recommended, honestly, we've had a pretty good year. See, Final Fantasy at the top's fine. That's fine. Is there anything that I'd move higher, is the question. No, I'm happy with that. Final Fantasy at the top and the bottom I recommended is hilarious to me, but yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that. Suika-Game, I'm debating putting it in recommended. I'm sat there thinking, is it better than New Frontier? And the answer's no. I'm going to move Suika-Game down to recommended. I still really recommend you play it, but I think I was a little too generous to Suika-Game. I'm going to move that down to recommended. We're gonna be a little bit generous here. We're going to be generous here. I am going to pick my game of the year out of these 6, and then I'm going to let you pick from the remaining 5 as to what your game of the year was. Okay, so we're going to have 2 game of the years. We're going to have Duel's game of the year, Viewer's game of the year. So I'm going to pick one of them. And then I'll open up a vote for you to pick your favourite one from the remaining 5. Okay, so we're going to have the top 2, basically. For me, I'm going to put my game of the year as Baldur's Gate 3. I'm putting Baldur's Gate 3. It's the obvious choice, but for me, it's my personal game of the year. I'm getting so much enjoyment out of it. It's insane. I just think it's an insanely good game. I think it's going to go down as one of the best games ever made. Honestly, I think it's going to go down as one of the best games ever made. I think I just have to put that there. But then also, I've removed it from your options. Starring for the win. You can vote for 3 of these. All you have to do, now it's a challenge for you, exactly. That's the main reason why I've done that. Feel free to start voting. Hi-Fi Rush, really? You picked Hi-Fi Rush. I did not think you were going to pick Hi-Fi Rush, but you did. So your game of the year out of those 5 is Hi-Fi Rush. Well, there you go. There you go. So Baldur's Gate 3 was my game of the year, though I mainly picked it so you couldn't. And Hi-Fi Rush is your game of the year, which is also very valid. There you go. Hi-Fi Rush and Baldur's Gate 3. Absolutely fantastic. You're only here to see Hi-Fi Rush and Final Fantasy V, so I'm fine with either. Fair enough. Fair enough. But there's our 2023 tier list for games I've played. 2024 is going to be a much larger list, because for 2024 we're having a themed month every single month, starting with Cozy Month, which is starting on Twitch immediately after we finish this list. We've got loads of themes for 2024. We've got Cozy Month starting right now for us on Twitch. We've got Romance Month, Marathon Month, Assassin April, Assassin games, Sci-Fi games, Indie games, Anime themed games, No Gaming Month, Retro games, Spooky games, games that came out this year, and then Final Fantasy Month again. We've got so much. I wouldn't be surprised if next year we have like 40 games by like March or April. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. 2024 will just be humongous for games. I'm anticipating probably somewhere in like the 60s for games, at least. I want to say 100 games, but I don't think I'll quite get to 100 games. But we've got a lot of games. A lot of games. I can't wait to make that list. Hi-Fi Rush and Baldur's Gate 3. Those are our games of the year. Fantastic.